Hi, Samar. How are you?
Bilkul theek. How are you, Jahan?
I'm great. It's so good to see you, even though this is virtually. I'm sure very soon we will be meeting in person. I'll be
Absolutely.
traveling to Lahore and Islamabad soon, so hopefully we'll catch up. So, Samar, I wanted to have this conversation with you and find out where you are coming from. So, why don't we start with a little bit about you, a little bit about your background that maybe is not so commonly known. Um, how did you start? Where did you start? Why are you doing what you're doing right now?
So I think, how did I start? We have to go back quite a while if you're going to ask me that. But I would say that really, if I think back to the first entrepreneurial experience that I had, that was when I was 13. So my mom set up a plant nursery called Samar Nursery. It was named after me as well. And
Wow.
if I think back about the roles, I was the marketing person, I was the sales person, I was the product person. So, all of the dry decoration department was in my court, and I had to, there were multiple things that we were doing with maize plants and whatnot, right? And then on the day when she would have these exhibitions, I was the seller. I was standing there describing, oh, this, that, and the other. This is the technique that we use, blah, blah, because we used to then paint all of the pots, etc. So if I think about it, I guess entrepreneurship goes back that far behind. And then I had the opportunity again to repeat that at university. So I ended up joining this organization called Basil Fulehan Foundation. I was their first employee. So that strain has continued throughout my life. So with Habib University Foundation, I was employee number 9 or so when I joined. Then a few people obviously left. So my number kept, my grade kept increasing, you would say. Same thing with Karandas. I think I was employee number 5 or 6. So a lot of my experience has been working in nascent organizations. So I think part of the reason why I do what I do is because I love that opportunity of that blank slate moment where you can literally craft things from scratch, right? And you're in the designing phase, you're in the design thinking phase, you get to structure everything. So I would say that's one of the biggest things where, you can use your creativity and stuff. And a lot of systems,
But it must be challenging as well, right?
It is challenging because you also have to pilot things out. You're doubting yourself as well, and you're experimenting a lot. But I think, you understand because you're also an entrepreneur. The first time kind of feeling again and again, I think that's something which is fantastic for entrepreneurs and, to replicate that. The other
Yeah.
piece I think, which is very important is being a woman and coming from an emerging country like Pakistan, where there are still challenges. I think we're so much better off than a lot of other countries. We can drive and, all of those things are set. We see ourselves at the workplace as well, but there are still inherent challenges which are there. And some of those challenges are, perhaps not even recognized that much. For instance, that fear of that authority figure, right? So even till today, when I see men who are older than me, who are, maybe not, yes, accomplished, maybe not always so accomplished, there's always that hesitation, right? And those are things that I think imposter syndrome, there are so many things now we have terms for it. Maybe we didn't have terms for it. So I think throughout that's been a very, very common strain. And the third big strain of our work has been, looking at the challenges that we're surrounded with. The minute you step outside, whether it's water issues, domestic, abuse issues, health, children's education, etc., etc. There are so many issues which I felt could be best tackled by social enterprises that are purpose driven, and purpose comes first and profit comes second. And obviously you cannot back each and every, cause because you're one person, but what you can do, you can support other people and play a role in their journeys. So that's, I think, kind of in a nutshell.
So tell us a little bit about Epiphany and Epiphany Games as well, which is more current than Epiphany itself. Tell us a little bit about that. I guess that is part of what you do at Epiphany, but tell us, and why the name Epiphany?
So Epiphany, the name behind Epiphany is actually a funny story. We had named the organization Brainwave. And then I was sitting there with my co-founder at that time, and we were discussing the logo. And I said, I see this flash of colors with brainwave, that epiphany moment. And then there was silence in the room, and we looked at each other. And I said, Epiphany, right? And he's like, yeah. So I called up the lawyer. I said, hey, can we please change the name? And he conned us because he told us, "Naam change nahi ho sakta, new company register karai." So we registered a new company then, which was Epiphany. And obviously, and then we're all storytellers. So if I think about it, I think it came together because Epiphany, that moment of sudden and utter realization, is what happened with me while I was at Karandas. Because obviously there were things which were pushing me in that direction. But I think there came a point where I said, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do Epiphany, and I want to help social enterprises and women-led businesses, because there's a very strong link between the two. And that's what I would like to do for now, at least, right? And I think that clarity came. And this is going to sound funny because maybe I'm not the best practicing Muslim out there. But usi time pe when I was thinking about it, the plans got finalized for our Umrah. It's the first and only Umrah that I've done. And I remember thinking that, oh, okay, you know what? God is literally calling me to his house to pray for the success of this thing that I want to do. This is the time. There is no better time than this, right? So I think everything was coming together.
That's such a cool story, and I'm glad it came together for you. So tell me, how would you describe a social enterprise? Because lots of people have lots of definitions for what a social enterprise is.
So I'm actually going to borrow the definition that Sadia, if you know her, so from Inara Impact. So she mentioned it at one of our events, and I think that stuck with me. So purpose first. So the difference between a social enterprise and other organizations is always going to be that they will be purpose driven. There is something which is driving them, some important goals that they would like to fulfill. And then there are going to be different pathways to do it. Some of them are going to be more donor centric in nature. Some of them are going to be profit driven businesses. But that's the other piece as well. So unlike NGOs, they are going to think about ways to generate their own revenue streams so they can be profitable. So those are kind of, literally two things. And, part and parcel of what they do, it's going, so the overall goals, objectives that they have under the social enterprise, they will find different ways to fulfill those goals always. So you'll find cross-cutting themes in their work. Right? So, I mean, I would describe it that way.
Yeah, no, very, very aptly described. So tell me, how does Epiphany help mentor and support impact startups as well as social enterprises? And also women-led enterprises, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we started off, we thought, okay, women and social, those are two things. We thought technology does not really need our help. Over the years, of course, tech-driven startups are coming up as well quite a bit, and we're supporting them. So if we look back at, what the work that we do, so we ended up partnering up with Uncharted, and we are the only company in Pakistan to have their licensed partnership. So the base curriculum, I would say, came from this time-tested model that they had implemented in emerging economies, including Afghanistan and Sierra Leone and different countries like that. And then when the curriculum was there, then we sat listening to a lot of different social enterprises, women-led businesses, entrepreneurs in general, and what they needed. So we customized that curriculum, which became Epiphany Lab. There are two versions of it. One is the pre-acceleration program that we do, which is for startups who may have an MVP. They may have gone through some incubation cycle. They may not have gone through some incubation cycle, but we find that, touching them at that point in time, there is support that they need, especially on the market research, go-to-market strategy, financials, cost assumptions, etc. So it is that lab is really about validating their business model. The other one that we do is called Epiphany Investment Preparedness Lab, which is for growth stage startups. So what we've targeted particularly are women-led startups and social enterprises through this work. The other thing that we then morphed, I would say last year or the year before that, we saw again and again that we were being approached for pitching bootcamps. That, hey, can you guys come and conduct a pitching bootcamp? So we said, okay, what if we change the model out? And I would like to acknowledge I2I as well, because they were doing the entrepreneur growth and fundraising program. So I attended that training, which was then going to culminate in a 5-day, replication of that for women entrepreneurs. So we did the 5-day version. Then we did a 3-day version after that. We morphed it further, because 5 days too were pretty, difficult. So now that's something that we've been doing consistently for women entrepreneurs. Just yesterday, we've kicked off a 3-month mentorship program with S&P Global under the Million Women Pledge that they've made to support 20,000 women. So,
that's a very good initiative that S&P has started. Yeah.
Absolutely. So so we'll support other organizations as well that are particularly focused on women-led businesses. But I would say by and large with women-led businesses, the focus has to be on the financials. At least for us, it has been on the financials, digital literacy, marketing, because those are areas where they struggle the most.
So yes, financial management definitely is one of the weak links. So while you are mentoring these startups and when you've been helping them and guiding them, what are some of the key findings that you've had? What are the things that you notice are those that need addressing more than other areas? Or are there no sort of I mean,
I wish
different
that
cohorts, obviously, different cohorts have different types of women at different stages of development. But are there any common linkages, common insights that you see that we can address, maybe even get educational institutions to address, so that when they come to us, we can do a better job of guiding them further along their journey?
Are you specifically asking for women-led businesses, Jahan, or
women-led businesses, particularly because women-led businesses and also social enterprises. So what are the things that you notice in each one that
So
are very...
I would say for both social enterprises and women-led businesses, there are certain things which are actually cross-cutting, which is interesting. But one of the biggest things that I find again and again is the lack of a very strong business model. So cracking the business model seems to be a challenge specifically for social enterprises, but it is also common for women-led businesses. The other piece that we find which is difficult for people is pricing. So pricing is something which comes up again and again in both parties. Social enterprises, because they're shy of asking for money from their beneficiaries, or they don't value their time enough. And the same thing comes across with women as well. The third piece, of course, which is something that we just mentioned, financial management. So really trying to understand how to put the financial statements together, it is daunting. The regulatory affairs are also daunting. So those two areas are common that, where I think a lot more support needs to be provided. I know that over the last, few months, I would say, the shift has started happening. So from focusing on digital marketing all the time, it has shifted towards financial literacy and financial management. But I think a lot more needs to be done. Where I find more needs to be done is actually in providing that hands-on support. So the training aspect is important for them to understand how to do it, but then I think they need that's whether it's as a service or whatever, but they need that support in preparing those documents, right? And getting ready for whether it's investment, whether it's a loan, or just simple, expanding of their business. I think that's important.
And also, have you found that there is a lack of confidence in some of them in being able to grow the business?
Absolutely. So there are two things which come up, right? One is that growth mindset, which is missing. So in a way, we've conditioned ourselves to say, oh, this is a hobby, this is a hobby, this is just something I do on the side, which is something that you may experience as well with women entrepreneurs. So it's always like, in a way, we're being apologetic quite a number of times for doing this thing that we're doing on the side. So in a way, we're trying to downplay it. And because of that, I think we are happy being, oh, we're good and we're doing this much business, we're earning this much money, and this is good enough for us. So I think there's that growth mindset, which needs to be we need to push them to be more ambitious. And on the other side, I think there is that insecurity, because even when they're doing well, they're constantly thinking maybe that imposter syndrome sets in. There are all these other biases, I think, yes, and that is, I think, which makes it very interesting to work with women entrepreneurs, because there are all these other elements which you don't see in a lot of other, male-led businesses.
And no two women are the same, just like no two entrepreneurs are the same. So yeah, you need to tweak it, but yeah, I see what you're saying. So tell me, in the kind of startups that you have mentored and that you have worked with, do you see any particular verticals that are more promising, that seem to be making more progress, that we should know about?
Okay, so Jahan, I think one of the things is, of course, where is the VC money coming right now? So automatically those strains are growing a lot, right? So e-commerce, logistics, travel, fintech, of course, we're seeing that whole growth happen in those areas more so. I wish that there was more focus on ed tech, health tech, agri-tech. There is some interest now, at least we see that. Gaming, I wish there was more interest in gaming. So the interest is coming in the sense that there are now, training programs being introduced. There is one more party that has started doing developers game jam, which is excellent. So they've just announced another game jam that's happening. So already this is going to be the third game jam for this year. And we know that we've got plans for future ones as well. But I think—
So what is the purpose of the game jams? Is it to, build skill sets? It's to create excitement? Is it to, create, some sort of partnerships or companies that emerge out of this? What is it that the game jams end up doing? And other than the fun they have.
Yes. So I'll go back to, because you'd asked me about Epiphany Games. Yeah. So in May 2020, when, right in the midst of COVID, we thought that there were so many things that we had wanted to do. And there were two things. I had thought that I would launch them after 3 years of existence of Epiphany. So that was coming together. And the other piece was, of course, because of COVID, a lot of our normal work was not taking place, right? So we thought, okay, this is the time to explore which other vertical do we want to introduce within Epiphany. And my co-founder, he still hasn't accepted the co-founder role, but he's acting like a co-founder. So anyway, so he had been after my life to do something in games since 2018, and I felt I was not ready. So first things first, what we started doing was describing the opportunity. So a lot of focus was on awareness and advocacy. And for that, we hosted different webinars, different talk sessions, etc. Then there was that whole element of missing women in the gaming space. So we launched a series called Wonder Women of the Gaming World. Then we realized that, okay, fine, we're doing all of these educational things. What's the next step? So the developers game jam came into existence. And the idea behind that is, in a way, you know how you've got a hackathon. So this is in a way a longer hackathon with more workshops and more sort of hands-on mentorship which is required. And at the end goal is to enable young people who may have never made a game before to come together and create games, right? And it's a time-bound event. So the first one that we did, the actual game jam itself was 60 hours, but we ended up with 18 games, right? So, I mean, I don't think we expected that kind of a result. And we had kept it very simple because we didn't want to create a barrier. So we said anybody and everyone can come in teams, come alone, we'll try and form the teams for you together, right? Provided them with, I think, 20 odd mentors or so, 10 plus workshops, and we were blown away. So that experience, again, we repeated this January, but this January we gave them more time. So they had 3 weeks. There was more programming, more hands-on one-on-one mentorship, and the challenge was bigger as well. So we gave them a theme. The genre of the game was also determined. It was hyper-casual food, right? But the idea, there are multiple things that, because in gaming, you'll notice that academically, there aren't a lot of institutions that are offering formal game design and development training. So in a way, the game jam is an easy pathway or a soft launch to enter into the games industry, right? And our objective, of course, through the community building aspect is to enable them to talk to all of these mentors, and maybe some of the mentors can then vouch for them and take them and induct them in their game studios, right? So, and the other piece, Jahan, so I always feel that there need to be shorter sort of experiments where the people, young people, because young people are still carving out their career paths. So in a way, the game jam enables them and provides them with that opportunity. Is this something that they want to pursue? If not, no harm done, right? But if yes, they've got that pathway, and if not, at a minimum, they've collaborated with teams, learned a lot, learned discipline as well, because there's a lot of conflict always when these young people come together. So learning to manage those expectations as well. So I think all in all, it's
and it is a growing area worldwide. I mean, e-games and gaming is something that we should be looking at as a country, right? And if people are interested and we can develop their skill sets, get them even more excited, get them to become part of companies that already exist in Pakistan, and then let them join wherever in the world there is an
opportunity. That's the other piece, right? So I think for young people, providing economic opportunities to them which are more meaningful, more lucrative, I think games does that, because on the one hand, of course, game design and development, on the other hand, esports. So we've also hosted quite a number of webinars on esports. Yes. 2 of our Wonder Women were also focused on esports. And then, of course, GameX happened, which was, a really big, I would say, even though it was virtual, but it was still a very substantial conference in the games industry, where we brought together more than 10 tracks. And, there were pitching events as well to enable young people who are, developing their games to receive feedback. There was a proper pitch fest as well with senior sort of studios and entertainment tech companies and international investors, because locally we still, like we mentioned, VCs are not really focused on this side. So we have to look international. So there are some few more plans for this year. Let's see how they materialize this year and next year. So
sounds exciting. So Samar, you are also an angel investor, right? And you also guide startups and founders on investments. So what should a startup keep in mind when they're seeking investment, and when is there a right time to look for investment, or or not?
So you can call me conservative, okay? Because we've had these conversations in Founder Institute's equity and funding ones with other investors, where obviously there is a lot of drive right now at the moment. They look, pick up the money, it's coming to Pakistan, just take it, right? And my approach is going to always be more conservative. find out what is it that you need. So prepare your plan accordingly, right? So I think the first step is really, there is that pathway that we talk about. The viral pathway is a tool that people should look at if they think that they are going to be funded by VCs. I think the other big important piece is to understand what sort of business you're doing. So I think that probably is the first step. If you understand that, then you understand what type of funding is going to come to you. So if you were a normal commercial enterprise, let's say a restaurant, not a lot of VCs are going to give you money, right? There will be some in Pakistan who will do it because they want a mix of commercial and tech-driven, disruptive sort of startups in their portfolio. So they may give you that money, but you need to understand it. So I think that's the first step. The other piece is I really believe in bootstrapping. So whenever you go to anybody, right, they ask you, oh, where have you worked before? Or what internship have you done? So it literally translates over into this. What have you done so far? Have you done your research? Do you have an MVP? And I understand that that is also a challenge because getting that MVP together, the amount of money that may be required for it, over there you need money as well. But that money will usually not come from investors, right? Because as we understand, the angel investor pool right now is not very well advanced. So that money is going to come from your personal savings. It's going to come from your friends and family. It's going to come from that chacha who lives in Dubai or wherever, right? And that needs to be your initial focus. Don't worry about, approaching really VCs who've established themselves because maybe they're not looking at your pipeline
and you should have skin in the game, right? If you don't have
and
skin
you have to have skin. And you've got to have proven something, right? So if you're saying, I don't know, if you're talking about, let's say, content creation and you're saying, look, the trend is going towards content creation. Okay, did you experiment? Have you done a pilot episode? And this is true for all fields. It's nothing new. So I think that's going to be one. Bootstrapping is going to be another. Third, preparing. What is it that you need? So the bootstrapped version of fundraising versus if we get the right amount of money, then we can set up that fancy office, right? But I always go back to Google and talk about how it started off in a garage. And then I always talk about Epiphany. So we made the mistake of setting up an office because we thought, bas abhi aa raha hai, there's a USAID fund which is going to come, and we'd applied for it with an international partner, which was supposed to be about approximately $4 million for the party in Pakistan. But Trump came, okay? And that never came. But, we burned a lot of our cash by setting up this office and etc. So I think it's important really to see within your resources as well. So I think one of the things that I do want to mention here, at times we forget how many resources exist in our network. You don't have to create your own office space. Find out if there is a co-working space. Pehle co-working spaces nahi the, chalo. But your friend may have had an office, but you can just use, their office. You just need a desk and a chair, right? So I think there are all these other mentors. I remember with the first Epiphany Lab, I drew on my friends from Habib and I made them travel from Karachi and Afaq from Kite. I didn't need to, spend that money technically. I mean, it was a great investment because they're fantastic, but I don't think I needed to, right? So I think you have to think about the resources where people can help you and who are your advisors. So the other piece I think for fundraising which is very, very important is what is your team? So unless you have a stellar team and you've got most of the people there, right? It's going to be very difficult to convince somebody that, your business is worth investing in because it's difficult for people to part with their money. For a startup.
And they're working full time and they're
working full time. And I think what is very, very important when you're taking money from any investor is how are you going to give them that return on investment? Whether they're an impact investor, whether it's a donor, whoever gives you money, or whether it's a bank, there are different things that they're looking for. But one of the things that they are looking for is, yes, this money is going to be utilized well and help grow the business, right? So the investor is obviously looking for, multi times X return, whereas perhaps the donor is also looking for impact and, job creation, etc. The bank is obviously looking for, hey, they're going to return my money with interest. But at the end of the day, you have to show that your business, the model is successful, the business model, and you will end up making more money. And if you don't have that, there and you're not articulating it well enough, say goodbye to fundraising. Bottom line.
Quite right. So, Samar, as we end this interview, what is next for Samar Hasan?
So I think right now the focus more and more is going towards Epiphany Games. I think there is a lot of scope in this area. We definitely want to pursue it. GameX is going to happen this year in person. So we're starting the planning for that. There is one other initiative called Celebrity Game Jams where we bring influencers from different fields of life and, they come in and they play games. Again, the objective behind this is awareness and advocacy. So that's something which we are pursuing full speed ahead. Another game jam definitely this year to look forward to for other people. So those are certain things I would love to launch an acceleration program for the games industry. But I feel right now the investors are not ready. So either we make a lot of money so we can do it ourselves, or we find somebody who understands why it's necessary. So those are kind of things which are coming up. The other piece I would say is that Epiphany's consulting arm, that's the other big focus for us right now. So we've done quite a bit of work in strategic communications and research and capacity building, where people have paid us consistently. We are going to be launching the next version of the AI/ML reactor in 2022. AWS has come back to us. So I think those are certain things where, again, we want to grow the core element of Epiphany so that we have more money to channel over to our passion projects.
Great. That's great to hear, and good luck. I'm sure you'll do it. You're a persistent young woman and you have done so much in so short a time. So good luck, and hopefully we can work together on something.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jahan.
Okay. Bye, Samar. Take care.